Suddenly, he heard a strange whistling sound, sharp and mechanical, something slicing through the still morning air. He turned and froze. Somewhere between the known and the unexplainable lie the stories of those who've seen beyond the stars. This is Strange Encounters. You know, I've never been one to tell tall tales, but what happened to me that night in 1982 is something I'll never forget. It stayed with me for more than 40 years, as clear as the night it happened. My wife and I were living in a small cottage in a quiet Cornish village, the kind of place that goes completely dark at night. No street lights, no traffic, nothing but the sound of the wind moving across the fields. We were surrounded on three sides by farmland, just us, the hedgerows, and the stars. That night, I was sound asleep when I woke up, gently but suddenly. There was no sound, no reason for it. I'm a heavy sleeper, always have been, but something pulled me from sleep, and right away, I noticed something wasn't right. There was light in the room. It wasn't bright, more like the glow of a few candles, soft, steady, almost golden. At first, I thought it must be moonlight coming through the window, but as my eyes adjusted, that idea vanished in an instant, because the light wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from the foot of my bed. I turned onto my back and lifted my head just slightly, and that's when I saw it. 6 feet away, standing perfectly still, was something or someone. My first thought, and I remember it word for word, was, "What the hell is that?" My mind started racing, trying to find an explanation, but there wasn't one. I just froze, staring. My brain couldn't categorize what I was looking at. It didn't fit anywhere in the normal world. After a minute or two, my panic began to fade. I remember this so clearly. Instead of fear, I felt calm, peaceful even, like that feeling was being sent to me somehow, almost as if it was trying to say, "It's all right, you're safe." Standing there was a being, a creature not of this world. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just looked at me, as if studying me. Its eyes blinked once, slowly. They were large and tilted upwards, not black like in the stories you hear now, but with pale yellowish whites and deep dark pupils. The head was large, rounder than the typical gray alien you see in films. It had no ears, no noticeable nose, just that glowing face. The light seemed to radiate from it. I can't explain why, but I felt no threat, just awe and an overwhelming sense of peace. I remember pushing myself up onto my elbows just to get a better look. Every part of me wanted to be sure I wasn't imagining this. First, I had to prove I was awake, so I pinched myself. Once, twice, over and over. I was definitely awake. Then I thought maybe it was a trick of light, something reflecting from outside, so I turned my head to the window. Nothing. Pitch black. No moonlight, no glow from anywhere, just darkness. I looked back, and it was still there, staring at me. I scanned the room slowly, every inch of it. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, twice. There was no other light source, no explanation. Every time I turned back, it was still there, patient, motionless, as if waiting for me to accept what I was seeing. And I did. I accepted it. Whatever it was real. If I had to describe it, I'd say it looked very much like the being that steps out of the spacecraft at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. About 4 feet tall, humanoid, but undeniably alien. I remember thinking, no one is ever going to believe this. Then I realized, my wife. She was right beside me, sound asleep. She could be my witness. I reached over and gently touched her leg under the covers. No reaction. I shook her a bit more. She mumbled something half asleep. What is it? I'm tired. I said, Joe, wake up. I gave her leg a shove and she began to stir, just about to open her eyes. And in that exact instant, the room went completely dark. The light vanished. I looked back and the creature was gone. No sound, no movement, no sign it had ever been there. Just the heavy silence of the cottage and the darkness pressing in all around me. I lay there for a long time, staring at the spot where it had stood, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Did it disappear like in Star Trek, beamed away, or did it simply fade out of existence? Or was I truly dreaming, despite everything I'd done to prove I wasn't? No, I know what I saw. I was awake, 100% completely awake. The whole encounter lasted 15 to 20 minutes, long enough to burn itself permanently into my memory, long enough that even now, decades later, I can still see those eyes when I close mine. Sometimes at night, when I'm lying in bed and the house is still, I find myself looking into the darkness, half expecting to see that soft glow again. And when I look up at the stars, I can't help but wonder if it or they are looking back, because I know, beyond any doubt, we are not alone. You know, I've never actually told anyone this before. Not really. It happened a long time ago, summer of 1971, back in Sunnyvale. I was just a teenager then. My best friend and I, we used to sneak out sometimes after our parents went to bed. Nothing bad, no drinking, no trouble. We just like walking and talking under the street lights. That night, it must have been around 11 o'clock. We were walking down Remington Street, that long, wide one that goes straight for what feels like forever. Everything was quiet. The whole neighborhood was asleep. She was talking about something, probably a boy knowing her, and I remember I was just looking down at my shoes, listening. Then all of a sudden, she stopped mid-sentence and said, "What is that?" So I look up, and there it was. Way down the street, maybe a quarter mile away, there was something hovering in the air. Not high up, just around the height of the street lights. It wasn't making a sound, it was just moving slowly, almost like it was gliding. Every so often it would stop for a few seconds and then start moving again, like it was looking around. It's hard to explain, but we could both feel it was doing something deliberate. We just stood there staring, didn't say a word. After a bit, it drifted closer, over toward the apartment buildings near the intersection, and that's when we could see it better. It's really hard to describe. It didn't look metallic or shiny. It wasn't even glowing. It looked wooden, like an old box made of beams. I know that sounds insane, a floating wooden box, but that's what it looked like. It was about the size of a small boat, maybe 20 or 30 feet long, hollow on top, like it didn't have a roof. And these arms, these huge arms, were slowly moving on its sides. They had lines or cables hanging off the ends, but they weren't ropes. They looked almost alive. Inside the open part, there were shapes. I don't even know what they were, but it didn't look empty, like it was full of things, objects, or maybe it was collecting things. I don't know. It hadn't noticed us at first. It was just sort of gliding, checking out the buildings, but then it changed. It turned. And I swear to you, it saw us. The way it moved, the back end tilted up, the front lowered down, it felt aggressive, like it was staring right at us. The air felt heavy all of a sudden. My stomach just dropped. My friend grabbed my arm and whispered, "We've got to get out of here." And I said, "Yeah." We both started running. There was a side street between us and that thing, and we knew somehow if we could just reach it, we'd be safe. We didn't talk about that. We just both knew. We were running as fast as we could, straight toward it, and that thing was coming right down the street at us. I remember praying, just praying we'd make it to that corner. We turned it, practically screaming, and ran right into her dad. He was furious, thought we'd been sneaking out for fun, but when he saw our faces, he knew something was wrong. We were crying, shaking. We told him what we'd seen. He went to the corner, looked down the street, and there was nothing there. Just empty road under the streetlights. He said it was probably a weather balloon. But no weather balloon moves like that. No weather balloon watches you. You know, all these years later, I can still see it as clear as day. That strange wooden shape floating over the road, those slow arms, that feeling deep in my gut that it wasn't supposed to exist. I don't care if anyone believes me or not. I know what I saw, and I'll never forget it. It was sometime around 1970 in a little place called Hampshire, Tennessee. A quiet night, the kind where nothing ever really happens. My husband was sitting outside the Hampshire Men's Club with a few of the regulars, older fellas, retired men mostly, just talking, passing the time, the way small town folks do. Then one of them pointed across the highway and said, "Hey, what's that up there, above that big tree?" They all looked, and hovering just above the tree line was this enormous, round, glowing object, bright orange like a ball of fire, but soft, hazy, surrounded by this orange mist that clung to it, almost like it was breathing light. And the strangest part, it made no sound. Not a hum, not a buzz, just silence. They sat there staring for several minutes, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Then, right before their eyes, the thing shifted. It turned sideways, stretching out, until it took on that classic cigar shape you always hear about in UFO reports. And then, in an instant, it shot off across the sky and disappeared. Gone. No sound, no trail, nothing. When my husband came home that night, I asked him how big it looked. He held his arms out in front of him, about 2 feet apart, and said, "About this wide." Later, I called CUFOS, the UFO Research Organization, to report what they'd seen. They told me it was probably just a satellite launched from Virginia that night. Well, when I told my husband that, he laughed and said, "Only if that satellite stopped for a visit in Middle Tennessee first." A few weeks later, I mentioned it to a friend of mine in the Astronomical Society down in Shreveport, Louisiana. She told me 2 men at their observatory had seen the same thing, same night, just smaller. And one of those men had even gotten a call from his mother in Michigan, who said she'd seen it too. Now, I can't say for sure what it was. I've never been certain of the exact date, but that glowing orange craft, silent, massive, and gone in seconds, has stayed with us ever since. If anyone out there remembers seeing something like that, I'd sure love to know. Because sometimes the sky over Tennessee holds secrets we still can't explain. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. I'm 78 now, 79 come September. But even if my eyes have faded, there are some things I've seen that I could never forget. I suppose it all began when I was just 5 years old, back at my grandmother's house in Edmonds, Washington. That afternoon, there was someone in the room with me, a boy, or maybe a young man. He was dressed in a white robe, standing there as if he'd always been part of the house. I never saw him come in. He had this calm presence. I remember talking to him, though I can't remember what we said, except for one thing. He said something that stayed with me my entire life. Puta, Lina, Thomea, Saisi. I have no idea what it means. It doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard since, and then he was gone. When I was a kid, I'd spend my summers in the woods, just a few blocks from my house. Those trees were my whole world. I'd climb, swing from branches, and sometimes I'd raise my arms and feel like I was lifting right off the ground. Maybe that was just a dream. I was 7 after all. But even back then, I had this strange feeling, like something out there was watching. The first time I saw a UFO was at Lake Serene in Linwood. It was a clear day, the air was still, and then there it was, a round disc, flames licking out from the bottom. It glided across the street and toward the lake, moving north before vanishing into the sky. I was no more than 40 feet away. I could see the metal glint in the sunlight. It must have been 30 feet across, 6 feet tall at least. Back in 1965, near the same school by Lake Serene, sightings like that weren't rare. It was almost daily. Strange objects hovering, moving silently, then gone before you could blink. Years later, in the 1970s, I was working near a Gulf gas station off Highway 99 in Linwood. That's when I saw it again. A disc, about 40 feet wide, completely smooth, like it had been cast from a single piece of metal. It hovered at an angle, maybe 20 degrees, just hanging there. I watched for what I thought was 15 minutes, but when I looked down at my watch, almost 2 hours had passed. I don't remember anything else. I just went home and slept. The next day, I went back, and there it was again. It floated right over the gas station, drifted across Highway 99, over McAllister's cycle shop, and then slipped into the trees heading west. 2 days, 2 discs, both exactly the same. For 30 years, I worked as an engineer in Seattle. A normal job, normal life. But even then, the strange things didn't stop. One night, when I was 25, I woke up to find a young girl standing beside my bed. She was about waist high to me, with long, straw blonde hair and a face that was almost human, but not quite. I wasn't afraid. I just remember saying she could do whatever she wanted. Then I went back to sleep. The next morning, I felt like I'd been beaten up. Every muscle in my body hurt. Then came the dread, this heavy, crushing fear that lasted for years. It wasn't until decades later, when I was living in Albuquerque, that I called Linda Moulton Howe. We talked for an hour or two. I told her everything. And after that call, the dread was gone, just like that. A few years later, I had another experience. I don't know if it was a dream or something more, but I remember walking down a long hallway, smooth white walls, a low hum in the air. A little girl was walking toward me. I knew her somehow. When we met, we touched hands. Then I saw them. People lying in these transparent bags, tubes coming out of them filled with greenish fluid. Their faces were still, peaceful. And that's the last thing I remember. The next moment, I was back home in Shoreline, Washington. These days, I don't have much use of my right hand. Used to feel like fire sometimes, but the pain's gone now thanks to a little supplement. I guess that life's catching up to me. But the truth is, I've seen things that make me certain we're not alone. You might believe there are UFOs. I don't have to believe. I know. It was a quiet summer dawn in Provence, France. The air was thick with the scent of lavender, and the rising sun painted the Valençol Plateau in soft gold. Farmer Maurice Masse had begun another ordinary day tending his crops until he saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. An object, a craft, and 2 beings that weren't human. This is one of Europe's most detailed and puzzling close encounters, the Valençol UFO incident of 1965. Valençol lies in southeastern France, a quiet village surrounded by rolling fields of purple lavender and olive trees. In 1965, the region was still rural and peaceful. Farmers, shepherds, and the occasional traveler. Maurice Masse was a well-known local, a practical man, a decorated veteran, not prone to fantasy. He rose before dawn, maintained his crops meticulously, and was respected by everyone in town. But on the morning of July 1st, 1965, his normal life would collide with the unknown. Around 5 a.m., Masse walked toward a small plantation, checking for any signs of theft. Suddenly, he heard a strange whistling sound, sharp and mechanical, something slicing through the still morning air. He turned and froze. About 200 feet away, resting among the lavender rows, was an object shaped like a large egg or rugby ball, metallic, with a narrow base planted into the soil. It stood roughly 2 meters wide and less than 2 meters high, supported by thin landing struts. But what truly seized his attention were the two small figures standing beside it. They were no taller than a child, perhaps under 4 feet, with large bald heads, pale skin, and tight-fitting gray suits. Their bodies seemed slightly disproportionate, long arms, small torsos. They were not human, at least not in any sense Masse understood. At first, he thought they might be pilots from a helicopter that had landed by mistake, so he approached, slowly, cautiously, about to call out. That's when one of the beings turned and raised a small tube-like device toward him. A sudden wave of paralysis struck. Masse later said it was as if every muscle in his body turned to stone. He could still see, he could still think, but he could not move. The two beings exchanged quick, chirping sounds, then re-entered the craft through a sliding door. Within moments, the craft lifted, silently, without any blast of air or sound, and shot straight upward, disappearing over the fields. After several minutes, Masse's body relaxed. He could move again, but his world would never be the same. Shaken, he inspected the site. Where the object had rested, he found a circular depression in the soil about 2 meters wide, and a central hole roughly 18 centimeters in diameter and 40 centimeters deep, surrounded by a cross-shaped pattern of indentations. The lavender plants nearby had been flattened in a precise radius. Over the coming days, the plants in that area withered and died, their roots turning brittle, the soil strangely compacted. Local gendarmes soon arrived to investigate. They photographed the markings, took soil samples, and filed a full report. The analysis showed that the soil near the hole had undergone unusual chemical changes, notably a higher calcium content and altered structure, as though exposed to intense heat or radiation. This was no simple prank. News spread quickly. By July 2nd, reporters descended on Valençon. Police and the Gendarmerie of Forcalquier interviewed Masse for hours. The verdict? He appeared truthful, calm, and consistent. One officer said later, "We've known Maurice Masse for years. He is serious, never a joker. If he says he saw something, he saw something." The French Air Force opened an inquiry, and later, the Gaipan Archive, the national agency that studies unexplained aerial phenomena, classified the case as unexplained. For weeks afterward, Masse reported feeling exhausted and strangely lethargic. Doctors found nothing physically wrong, but he slept up to 12 hours a day. He also developed an odd aversion to speaking publicly about the event. Years later, he told close friends that he had experienced some kind of telepathic communication with the beings, a sense of calm, of purpose, but he refused to elaborate further, saying, "There are things I cannot tell you." He guarded that secret until his death in 2004. Skeptics have tried to explain what happened that morning. Some believe he saw a military helicopter, perhaps an Alouette, performing low-altitude maneuvers, but witnesses across the region heard no helicopter noise that day. Others suggest a hoax, or a misidentification of agricultural equipment, or even a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. Still, those physical traces, photographed and measured, remain unexplained, and the gendarmes, known for their rigor, stood by the report. The official classification today? Pan type D, phenomena unidentified. Nearly 6 decades later, the Valençon case is still cited by investigators as one of the best documented CE3, close encounters of the third kind, in Europe. It's inspired films, novels, and decades of speculation. Tourists still visit the exact spot where Masse's lavender field once lay. Whatever he saw that July morning, whether visitors from another world, a secret experiment, or something far stranger, Maurice Masse never recanted his story. He remained steadfast until his death, saying quietly to anyone who asked, "What I saw was real. They were here, and they will come again." What do you think happened that morning in Valençon? Was Maurice Masse touched by something from beyond our world, or fooled by something far more ordinary? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring the unexplained, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true UFO encounters from around the world. The skies hold secrets we've yet to understand, and the truth may be closer than we think. Until next time, keep watching for your own strange encounter.